Imagine, if you can, a place so hidden from history that it might as well have never existed. A place so terrifying that for decades its existence was denied, its truths buried deep beneath the shadow of wartime secrecy. A place where humanity was tested to its absolute breaking point, pushed beyond any form of imagination under the guise of scientific experimentation. A place where psychological and physical torture were not only used but became tools to break the human spirit. For years, the world had no idea that such atrocities took place. Hidden in the remote corners of Japan, inside what came to be known as Japan's dark lab, were countless individuals subjected to horrors so brutal they defy belief. Today on Drift, we are going to reveal the untold story behind one of the darkest chapters in history. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll know what the world was never told, and the truth will haunt you long after the screen fades to black. But before we dive deep, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more hard-hitting investigations, because you do not want to miss the shocking truths we uncover here on Drift. Let's set the stage. The year is 1940, the world is at war, and in the heart of Japan, something sinister is taking root. In a secluded, heavily guarded facility in the northern regions of the country, away from prying eyes, a series of dark experiments were being carried out. Known by those involved as the Dark Lab, this site was a secret that Japan's government and military desperately tried to conceal. It was a place where human beings, often civilians, captured in the aftermath of wartime skirmishes, were taken as subjects of grotesque and inhumane experiments. This wasn't science, it wasn't medicine, it was cruelty masked as research, a twisted attempt to push the boundaries of human endurance and survival. Japan's military, with its obsession for victory, believed that manipulating and breaking the human spirit would give them the edge they desperately sought. The goal was simple: create a race of super soldiers who could endure the unendurable, withstand unimaginable pain, and fight with no regard for their own lives. What they didn't realize was that in their pursuit of military dominance, they were creating a nightmare, a legacy of torture that would haunt them forever. Thousands of innocent people, many of them civilians who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, became unwilling guinea pigs in a series of appalling experiments. Today, the stories of those who survived are slowly coming to light, and the atrocities that took place behind those darkened walls are finally being brought to the surface. The nature of the experiments conducted at the Dark Lab was nothing short of monstrous. This was not the work of well-meaning scientists or medical professionals trying to advance humanity through their research. No, these were people with a twisted agenda, military officers and scientists who believed that the human body and mind were nothing more than machines to be tested, bent, and broken. And they did so with a complete disregard for the value of human life. The experiments varied, but they all had one thing in common: suffering. Victims were subjected to extreme conditions that pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. Imagine being submerged in freezing water for hours, your body becoming numb as you struggle to keep your breath. Some were placed in chambers where the temperature was so high it felt like the very air was trying to scorch their skin. Others were given lethal doses of chemicals, some of which caused immediate and excruciating pain. But the physical suffering was only part of the torment. Psychological experiments were conducted as well, with prisoners forced to endure unthinkable mental anguish. They were made to watch their loved ones suffer, sometimes in front of their very eyes. Others were led to believe they would survive, only to be betrayed at the last moment when all hope was ripped away. The goal of these experiments wasn't just to break the body, it was to break the mind, to strip away any sense of hope, leaving only a hollow shell of a person who could be controlled at will. The victims were treated not as human beings, but as mere data points, test subjects for experiments designed to measure the absolute limits of human endurance. And why? What was the military hoping to achieve with such cruelty? The simple answer is control. They wanted to see how far they could push the human spirit before it shattered completely. They wanted to learn how to manipulate human beings into becoming the ultimate soldiers, unstoppable, unfeeling, and unquestioning. What they didn't realize was that in their pursuit of this dream, they were creating a nightmare that would haunt them for generations. These experiments didn't just take place over a few months or even a year. No, they spanned over several years, from the mid-1940s through to the early 1950s. During this time, thousands of prisoners were brought to the facility with little to no hope of escape. The military's plan stretched far beyond just a few isolated tests. They believed that by pushing the human body and mind to the limits, they could create soldiers who could endure any form of pain, suffering, or deprivation. In their eyes, this was a crucial step toward victory, but in the end, what they created wasn't a new breed of soldier. It was a legacy of broken souls, victims who would carry the scars of their torment for the rest of their lives. The scope of the experiments was staggering. While the exact number of victims is still unknown, it's estimated that at least 3,000 individuals were subjected to some form of testing during this time. Some of them didn't survive the tests. Others were left physically and emotionally scarred for life. Even those who made it out of the facility with their lives were left with deep psychological wounds, many of which would never heal. The full extent of the damage caused by these experiments is still being uncovered today, but it's clear that the scale of the suffering was far greater than anyone had previously realized. For the few who survived these gruesome experiments, life after the lab was a struggle in its own right. They were left with memories that no one should ever have to carry, memories of suffering so intense they could hardly be spoken about. Many of the survivors were left in a state of emotional and psychological disarray, unable to cope with what they had been through. The mental toll was just as severe as the physical pain they endured. One survivor in particular recalls being subjected to hours of electric shock treatments so intense that his body went into shock and his mind was left fractured. Others recount being submerged in freezing cold water for hours, their bodies shivering uncontrollably until they were numb to the core. But despite the unimaginable pain, they survived. They made it out of that hellish place, but their survival came at a heavy price. These survivors suffered from PTSD, depression, and crippling guilt. Guilt for the things they had witnessed and for the loved ones they had lost. Many of them never spoke out about their experiences, either out of fear or because they couldn't bear to relive those memories. But over time, their voices began to emerge, and the truth about what had happened in the dark lab slowly came to light. Behind the atrocities at Japan's dark lab were the men who ordered the experiments, the high-ranking military officers and respected scientists who believed in the necessity of these horrific tests. Some of these scientists were well-known figures in Japan's scientific community, with impeccable credentials and a reputation for excellence. But they were willing to compromise their morals and ethics for the sake of military progress. They were tasked with finding ways to manipulate human endurance, to measure how much a person could take before they broke. And many of them went along with these orders, conducting tests that pushed the boundaries of science and humanity in ways that were unimaginable. Some of the officers and scientists continued their work even after the war ended, quietly overseeing the continuation of these experiments even after Japan had surrendered. They did so in the shadows, trying to hide their actions from the world. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't keep the truth buried forever. As the war came to an end, Japan's leaders knew they had to cover up the horrors that had taken place. The government worked tirelessly to destroy all evidence of the experiments, documents were burned, facilities were shut down, and survivors were threatened into silence. It was as though this chapter of history never even happened. But as we all know, history has a way of revealing itself, no matter how hard people try to hide the truth. Over time, declassified documents, leaks from former military personnel, and testimonies from survivors began to shed light on the horrifying events that took place inside the dark lab. Still, the full scale of the experiments remains hidden, with many of the documents and details continuing to be suppressed by the government. But the truth couldn't stay buried forever, and the world is now beginning to see the full extent of the suffering that took place. The story of Japan's dark lab is a painful reminder of what happens when governments lose sight of humanity in the pursuit of power. It's a story of cruelty, sacrifice, and survival. But it's also a story of justice, a reminder that the survivors of these experiments and the families of those who died deserve answers. They deserve recognition for the pain they endured, and we all deserve to know the truth so we can ensure that something like this never happens again. If this story shocked you, if you feel the weight of the truth and believe that the world deserves to know, we urge you to speak out. Share this video, comment your thoughts below, and help us spread the truth. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more deep dives into history's darkest secrets. Did you know about these experiments before? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters in making sure this history is never forgotten